They thought they had seen every kind of cruelty a slave auction could offer: broken bodies, empty eyes, and souls crushed long before the bidding began. But in 1868, in a Louisiana courtyard soaked in sweat and shadows, a new terror appeared. A girl who looked nothing like a girl, yet was more breathtaking than anyone had the right to be. Buyers whispered that something was wrong with her beauty, that her face was too symmetrical, her eyes too calm, her presence too perfect, almost engineered. And the more they stared at her, the more uncomfortable they felt. Some swore she wasn't human. Others said she was a curse deliberately disguised as a child. No one could explain why every witness felt the same thing, as if she carried a secret that should never reach the light. But when the highest bidder finally stepped forward, the girl turned her head, looked him straight in the eyes, and whispered something that made him collapse to his knees. No one ever repeated what she said. No one dared, because whatever came from her lips was not meant for human ears. And this is where her real story begins. A story buried by the people who bought her, hunted her, feared her, and eventually tried to erase her from history. They said the morning of the auction felt wrong before it even began. The sky hung low over the Louisiana courtyard, thick with humidity, as if the air itself were struggling to breathe. Men fanned themselves with hats. Women hid behind lace veils, and a wooden platform in the center creaked under the weight of a history no one dared speak aloud. Auctions were common. Suffering was routine. But today, something else was here. They brought her out quietly. No chains, no shouting, no resistance. Just a thin figure walking on bare feet across sunburned planks. At first glance, the crowd murmured in confusion. The posture, the clothing, the cropped hair, it all resembled a boy. A small, fragile one. But when she lifted her head, when the light struck her face from the side, the murmurs died into a suffocating silence. She was a girl with features sharper than any sculptor could carve. Jawline as clean as a young man's. Eyes soft, but strangely knowing. A beauty so precise it felt unnatural, as if a hidden hand had shaped her deliberately. Some men in the crowd leaned forward. Others stepped back. Families turned stiff, uneasy, because when she looked at them, just looked, every person felt something they couldn't explain, a prickling behind the eyes, a twist in the gut, a sudden awareness that this child was not supposed to be here. The auctioneer cleared his throat, trying to mask the tremble in his voice. Lot 32, he announced, though even he refused to say her name. Healthy, young, skilled, and exceptionally presentable. The last phrase felt wrong on his tongue. A wealthy planter near the front, a man infamous for buying what others feared, raised his hand first. His confidence was unsettling, almost desperate. Another man joined, then another. The bidding escalated faster than anyone expected, as if something compelled them, as if they were chasing a beauty they didn't understand, a beauty that quietly threatened them. The girl didn't move, didn't cry, didn't flinch. She simply watched, not with fear, but with recognition, as though she knew what each bidder hid in his heart, as if she could see their sins in the space between heartbeats. When the final bid struck the courtyard, the winning man stepped toward her, smug and satisfied. And for the first time, she blinked slowly, not in innocence, but with the calm of someone who already knows the ending long before the story begins. The man who won her, Nathaniel Crow, was not easily shaken. He had survived wars, storms, and riots. He had buried 2 wives, outlived 4 children, and built his fortune on brutality so practiced it no longer troubled him. People whispered that his heart had dried out long ago, leaving only hunger behind. But when he stood before the girl he had just purchased, hunger was not what he felt. It was fear. He didn't understand it then. He didn't admit it. But his hand trembled when he reached for her arm. Her skin was warm, alive. Yet something about her felt off, as if she were too still, too quiet, too aware. The courtyard swore they saw her body tense, not in resistance, but in calculation, as if she was measuring the distance between herself and the man who owned her now and deciding what he deserved. Nathaniel forced a smile, a thin, nervous imitation of confidence. "What's your name?" he asked. She lifted her head just enough that sunlight grazed the sharp edges of her face. Her eyes, unblinking, unsoftened, met his. "You already know," she said. The words were soft, too soft, but they struck him like a blade. Nathaniel stumbled back a half step, though he would later deny it. How would I know?" he muttered. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. A few people near the platform shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another, wondering if they'd heard correctly. But no one dared speak. Louisiana was full of superstitions. People stayed alive by avoiding anything that smelled of the supernatural. Nathaniel grabbed her wrist a little too aggressively, more to steady himself than to control her. "You'll come with me," he ordered. But she didn't move. Not until she wanted to. Not until she had studied him, slowly, deliberately, like someone memorizing the shape of a future crime scene. Finally, she took one step forward, then another. Her bare feet touched the dusty earth, but she walked as if the ground were beneath her only because she allowed it. Nathaniel swallowed hard and forced himself to lead her toward his carriage. But with each step she took behind him, he felt the same thing he felt on battlefields long ago. The sensation of something watching him, reading him, judging him. By the time she climbed into the carriage, everyone in the courtyard had the same unspoken thought. This girl was not bought. She allowed herself to be taken. The road from the auction yard to Nathaniel Crow's plantation was only 7 miles. Yet those 7 miles felt like a journey into something far older and darker than Louisiana's swamps. The horses snorted nervously as the carriage rolled forward, their hooves striking hard against the sun-baked dirt. Nathaniel sat across from the girl, pretending to study the passing trees, but never truly taking his eyes off her. She sat perfectly still, back straight. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, not like a frightened child, more like someone who had been waiting a very long time to be exactly where she was. Her features, sharp and androgynous, caught the light like fragments of a forgotten statue. Every time the carriage tilted, shadows shifted across her face, making her look alternately like a delicate boy and a deity carved from stone. It unsettled Nathaniel deeply. He found himself wondering, absurdly, whether she had always looked like this or whether his eyes were beginning to betray him. "What do you want from me?" he asked at last, the words escaping before he could stop them. She turned her head slowly, gracefully, as a predator would. "I want nothing," she said. "Not yet. Not yet." The phrase slid into his bones like cold water. Nathaniel cleared his throat. "You'll work in the house. You'll earn your keep. You'll..." Her voice cut through his like a blade made of calm. "I won't be staying long." Nathaniel stiffened. "You belong to me now." "No," she replied. Not loudly, not defiantly, just truthfully, as if she were correcting a simple mistake. The horses suddenly jerked, nearly veering off the road. The driver cursed, struggling to regain control. Nathaniel gripped the seat, heart pounding. When he looked back at the girl, she hadn't even flinched. A thin smile touched her lips, not playful, not cruel, just knowing. Nathaniel tried to regain his composure. "You speak too boldly for a child." "I speak exactly as I must," she said. "And you hear exactly what you fear." The carriage wheels struck a stone, jolting both of them. For the first time, Nathaniel noticed something he had missed before, a faint series of marks along her wrists. Not scars, not cuts, symbols. Soft, delicate, etched in her skin like ink pressed beneath the flesh. Nathaniel stared, but the girl gently pulled her sleeves down and hid her wrists again, as if the time to reveal them had not yet come. Nathaniel Crow's plantation house had never known silence. It creaked, it moaned, it complained beneath the weight of memory and misery. But when the girl stepped through the doorway, the house went still, unnaturally still, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Nathaniel paused just behind her. He wasn't a man given to superstition, yet a strange chill crawled up his spine as he watched her survey the entrance hall. Her eyes moved slowly across the staircase, the chandelier, the portraits, lingering on each object as though she recognized them. But that was impossible. She had never been here before. One of Nathaniel's house servants, an older woman named Mara, shuffled forward to greet them. Her voice trembled the moment she saw the girl. She's just a child," Mara whispered, almost to herself. "No, Nathaniel Mater. Not just." The girl turned her gaze toward Mara, and the older woman froze mid-step. Her breath caught in her throat, and her fingers twitched as though she wanted to make the sign of the cross, but feared it would anger the child standing before her. "You've seen her kind before," the girl said quietly. Mara's face drained of color. "Child, I don't know what you—" "Yes," the girl interrupted softly. "You do." Nathaniel's heartbeat quickened. "That's enough," he snapped. "Mara, show her where she'll be staying." Mara nodded quickly, almost too quickly, and motioned for the girl to follow. The girl didn't move at first. Her eyes drifted upward to the second floor, to a specific doorway, Nathaniel's late wife's room. A room sealed since the night she died. "Who lived there?" she asked. Nathaniel stiffened. "No one you need to know." The girl tilted her head, studying him with unsettling precision. "She died afraid," she said, "afraid of what was coming." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, anger rising to his face. But beneath the anger was something worse, recognition. His wife had indeed died in terror, whispering incoherent warnings with her final breaths. Warnings he had dismissed. "Take her upstairs," he ordered sharply. Mara reached for the girl's arm, but the girl stepped forward on her own, bare feet silent on the wooden stairs. Each step she took made the house groan softly, like an old animal remembering something painful. When they reached the second-floor landing, Mara finally found her voice. "What are you?" she whispered. The girl didn't answer. She simply smiled, a small, haunting smile, as if the question itself was far too small for what she truly was. Mara led her down the long, dim hallway that smelled of dust, camphor, and a century of locked-away secrets. The doors lining the walls were plain, unremarkable, rooms for field hands, servants, forgotten workers. Mara stopped at the third door on the left and pushed it open with a stiff, trembling hand. "This one's yours," she murmured. The girl did not step inside. She stood motionless in the doorway, eyes traveling slowly across the cramped space, the bare cot, the small window, the cracked pitcher on the table. Her expression did not change, but something in the air did. Mara felt a pressure in her chest, a sensation like she was standing too close to a storm. "It will do," Mara insisted nervously. "Most of them." "No," the girl whispered. Mara's spine stiffened. "What?" The girl looked down the hallway, past the dusty floorboards, past the forgotten rooms, past the locked doors. "This is not my room." "But child," Master Nathaniel. She was already walking, bare feet gliding silently, as if the house itself was guiding her. She did not choose the stairs, nor Nathaniel's late wife's room this time. Instead, she stopped before a door no one had opened in years. A door swollen with humidity and memory. A door that Nathaniel had forbidden anyone to touch. Room 12. Mara's breath caught. No, not that one. No one goes in there. The girl placed her hand on the doorknob. "You locked this room," she said softly, "but it was never yours." Before Mara could protest, before she could even reach for the child's wrist, the girl turned the knob, and the door opened effortlessly. The scent that poured out was a mix of dust and something older, something metallic like the faint trace of dried blood or forgotten tears. The room was larger than the servant quarters, but it was not grand. Something about it felt suspended, as if time itself refused to move inside its walls. The girl stepped in, and the house seemed to exhale. Mara hesitated at the threshold. "Why this room?" The girl ran her fingers lightly along the windowsill, tracing the faint grooves carved into the wood, grooves shaped like symbols, nearly identical to the marks on her wrists. "I've slept here before," she said. Mara shook her head violently. "You couldn't have. This room's been shut since." "Since she left," the girl finished. "Since she tried to warn him." Mara's knees weakened. "You speak as if you knew her." The girl turned her gaze, and for the first time, something ancient flickered in her eyes. "I didn't know her," she said. "I remember her." The girl's words hung heavy in the stale air of the room. Mara's eyes narrowed, searching the child's face for any sign of deceit. But what she saw was neither child nor liar. It was something older, haunted by shadows that stretched far beyond the confines of this plantation. "Remembered her?" Mara whispered, incredulous. "Ow!" The girl turned slowly, eyes glinting like smoldering coals. "Some memories don't belong to you, but they belong inside you." Mara took a hesitant step back, heart pounding in her chest. "That's madness." "Maybe," the girl admitted, "but madness often hides the deepest truths." She pulled her sleeves back just enough to reveal the symbols on her wrists. Intricate patterns etched like ancient runes, faint but undeniable. "Those marks," Mara gasped. "They're the signs of the Maroon Witches. The ones who disappeared generations ago. No one thought they survived." The girl's lips curled in a sad smile. "They did more than survive. They waited, hidden, watching, remembering." Nathaniel's voice echoed from the doorway, cold and commanding. "What nonsense is this?" He entered, his eyes locked on the girl. "You will not spread old superstitions. This is a business. You are property." The girl met his gaze without fear. "Property? I am the heir to a secret that will unravel this plantation, this family, this entire system." Nathaniel laughed bitterly. "You speak like a queen, but you arrived as a slave." "Names don't define power," she said quietly. "Blood does, and blood remembers." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "Your ancestors built this house on broken promises and buried sins. They try to hide what they feared, but fear is never silent." Nathaniel's face tightened, a flicker of something resembling dread flashing in his eyes. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," she replied. "And soon, everyone here will know it too." Mara shivered as the girl's words cut through the heavy air like a blade. The plantation was no longer just a place of work and suffering. It had become a battleground of unseen forces, forces that the girl had come to awaken. Nathaniel's glare bore into her like a blade, but she did not flinch. Instead, she leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper, yet heavy with authority. "You think this is about ownership? About laws and contracts? No, this is about control, about fear, about keeping a secret so dark that even the light fears to touch it." He laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. "You speak of secrets, child, but I've seen this land longer than you've been alive. I know what's buried here." The girl's eyes shimmered with something ancient. "What's buried is not soil, Nathaniel Crow. It's silence, blood, lies." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Your family's fortune was built on more than just sugar and slavery. It was built on a pact, a deal with forces no man dares name." Nathaniel's hands clenched into fists. "You're mad." Nathaniel's voice echoed from the doorway, cold and commanding. "What nonsense is this?" He entered, his eyes locked on the girl. "You will not spread old superstitions. This is a business. You are property." The girl met his gaze without fear. "Property? I am the heir to a secret that will unravel this plantation, this family, this entire system." Nathaniel laughed bitterly. "You speak like a queen, but you arrived as a slave." "Names don't define power," she said quietly. "Blood does, and blood remembers." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "Your ancestors built this house on broken promises and buried sins. They try to hide what they feared, but fear is never silent." Nathaniel's face tightened, a flicker of something resembling dread flashing in his eyes. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," she replied. "And soon, everyone here will know it too." Mara shivered as the girl's words cut through the heavy air like a blade. The plantation was no longer just a place of work and suffering. It had become a battleground of unseen forces, forces that the girl had come to awaken. Nathaniel's glare bore into her like a blade, but she did not flinch. Instead, she leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper, yet heavy with authority. "You think this is about ownership? About laws and contracts? No, this is about control, about fear, about keeping a secret so dark that even the light fears to touch it." He laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. "You speak of secrets, child, but I've seen this land longer than you've been alive. I know what's buried here." The girl's eyes shimmered with something ancient. "What's buried is not soil, Nathaniel Crow. It's silence, blood, lies." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Your family's fortune was built on more than just sugar and slavery. It was built on a pact, a deal with forces no man dares name." Nathaniel's hands clenched into fists. "You're mad." "Madness is often the only sane response to truth," she said softly. "The pact demanded obedience, silence, and sacrifice. And when those demands weren't met," her voice dropped to a chilling whisper, "there were consequences." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes like the restless breath of the past. The plantation seemed to listen, hanging on her every word. "You don't believe me," she said. "You never wanted to believe. But that's why you invited me here, isn't it? To keep the secret, to keep control." Nathaniel's eyes flickered, betraying a flicker of fear. You came here as a slave, but you are no slave. You are a living reminder, an impossible secret of everything this house tried to bury. She stood taller, stepping closer to the windows where the sunlight cast long shadows. On the reckoning, Nathaniel swallowed hard, his facade cracking. And what do you want? The girl's gaze pierced through him. To be heard, to be known, to break the silence. She turned to Mara, voice low and steady. Tell me, do you know the phrase? Mara's eyes widened. Which phrase? The girl's lips curved. The phrase that binds. The phrase that awakens. Speak it with me. Now, take a moment and type the phrase Silent Blood Remembers twice in the comments below. It is not just words. It is a key, a symbol, a choice. Saying it aloud locks in a transformation, awakens something inside you, and tells the algorithm you are ready for what comes next. This phrase is your initiation into the forbidden truths that will unravel everything you thought you knew. The plantation was more than just land. It was a tomb, a crypt for promises made in shadows, soaked in blood and sealed with silence. Nathaniel's eyes darkened as the girl spoke, each word peeling back layers of a history he had long tried to bury, not just in the soil, but in his mind. The pact, she began, was forged generations ago when your ancestors faced a choice, wealth at any cost or ruin. They chose wealth, but it was never free. Her voice was steady, commanding, like a historian revealing forbidden chapters. That cost was human, not just lives, but souls. Men and women who vanished without a trace, whose screams were swallowed by the sugar fields, whose names were erased. Nathaniel's breath hitched. He wanted to deny it, to bury it beneath polite smiles and ledger entries. But he couldn't. The truth was etched into every creaking floorboard, whispered by every restless wind. The pact demanded obedience from those who lived here, she continued. Obedience enforced not just by chains, but by fear of something darker, something that watched from the shadows, something that remembered every betrayal. She pulled her sleeves down, concealing the ancient symbols once more. I carry the blood of those who resisted, those who dared defy the pact. I am the living memory of their rebellion. A heavy silence settled. Mara looked away, eyes wet with a grief that spanned centuries. Nathaniel finally spoke, voice low and harsh. You think you can undo that? You a slave? A child? She smiled, cold and knowing. Im no slava. I'm the reckoning, and the reckoning always comes. Outside, the sun slipped behind darkening clouds, casting the plantation into shadow. It was as if the land itself was holding its breath, waiting for the moment when silence would shatter. Your family's power was never just in wealth or titles, the girl said. It was in secrecy, in the silence they forced upon the past. But silence is fragile. It breaks. Nathaniel's eyes flickered with something like fear. What happens if it does? Then everything changes, she said. The impossible becomes real. The forgotten wakes. And the price is paid, not in gold, but in blood. The plantation's true power was not forged in iron shackles or whipping lashes. Those were only the surface tools of fear, easily seen and understood. The real chains were invisible, woven deep into minds, laws, and beliefs. The girl's voice lowered, serious as a judge delivering verdicts no one dared speak aloud. The system was designed to break not just bodies, but souls. To convince those trapped here and those who watched that this was natural, inevitable, and permanent. Nathaniel's posture stiffened, his face betraying discomfort. The truth was a threat to his carefully constructed world. Control was never just physical, the girl said. It was psychological, institutional, legal. She paced slowly, eyes scanning the room as if pulling invisible threads from the walls. Every law written in Louisiana, every decree, every court ruling was a part of this cage, designed to erase identity, rewrite histories, and silence voices that dared to speak. Mara's hands clenched, the weight of centuries pressing down. The plantation was a machine, fueled by fear and obedience, maintained by rituals both cruel and mundane. The girl stopped, fixing Nathaniel with a piercing gaze. Your family's name was etched into those laws, into those rituals. But it was a lie, an illusion to keep power concentrated, to keep rebellion at bay. Nathaniel's eyes flickered, shadows crossing his face. The women who carried this legacy, the maroon witches, were erased from history, branded as mad, dangerous, forbidden. But their magic wasn't just spells or curses, she whispered. It was knowledge, knowledge of freedom, of truth, of power beyond chains. The room seemed to close in, the air thick with unspoken secrets. Controlling the mind is more powerful than controlling the body, she said, because the mind can imprison a man even when his hands are free. Nathaniel's voice cracked. You threaten everything we built. No, she said softly, stepping forward. I threaten the lies that built it. Her words were not an accusation, but a summons, a call to confront the darkness that no ledger could contain. The roots of power often grow deep beneath the surface, twisted and dark, nourished by secrets no history book dares reveal. The girl's voice lowered to a dangerous whisper, as if invoking forces too old to name aloud. Your family's rise was not just built on sugar and blood. It was fueled by corruption older than this land itself, a corruption that predates even the founding of Louisiana. Nathaniel's jaw clenched, a flicker of unease flashing in his eyes. They made bargains with shadows, forces that promised wealth and influence, but demanded a price beyond reckoning. She paced slowly, each word slicing through the room like a sharpened blade. This corruption seeped into every corner of society, churches, courts, banks, and plantations alike. It was the hidden hand guiding the course of history, unseen but relentless. Mara watched, her breath shallow. These forces aren't myths. They're systems, institutions designed to preserve a corrupt order. The girl's eyes glinted with cold fire. The maroon witches knew this. They fought not just for freedom, but to sever those dark roots. That's why they were hunted, demonized, and erased. Nathaniel's voice trembled, though he masked it with authority. Why reveal this now? What's the purpose? To awaken, she replied. To remind those who still live in the shadow of that corruption that the chains are not just physical, but spiritual and mental. She reached into her pocket and produced a small, worn talisman, a symbol of resistance passed down through generations. This talisman holds the legacy of those who dared defy the pact. It is both a curse and a promise. Nathaniel's eyes flickered to the talisman, a flicker of recognition and fear. Destroy it, and the past will remain buried. Protect it, she said, voice steady, and the impossible secret will unravel. Outside, the wind howled like a warning, as if the very earth understood the weight of what was unfolding. "The corruption that built this house is still alive," she said, "but so is the power to tear it down. Behind every empire built on blood, there are architects, masters of manipulation who hide behind masks of respectability." The girl's voice sharpened with quiet fury as she began to unravel the web. The plantation was just one piece of a vast system designed to deceive and control. The real power lived in courts, churches, and banks, institutions that claimed to uphold justice but thrived on exploitation. Nathaniel shifted uncomfortably, the truth cutting too close to home. These institutions crafted laws not for fairness, but to legitimize cruelty, to protect wealth, to silence dissent. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. They created stories, myths of racial superiority, natural order, divine right. Lies dressed as truth, repeated until they became unquestionable. Mara listened, heart pounding. It was all a show, a grand illusion to keep people divided and powerless. The girl's tone dropped. And the most dangerous weapon? Fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of retribution. Fear of losing everything. Fear kept the chains tight, even when no one was holding them. Nathaniel's voice was a whisper now. "You speak of ghosts, but these ghosts control the present." "Exactly," she said. "The ghosts of lies, broken promises, and hidden agendas haunt every corner of this land. And those who remember the truth are hunted, silenced, erased." She held up a faded ledger, its pages yellowed with age. "This ledger is more than a record. It's a roadmap of corruption, betrayal, and complicity. Names, dates, debts paid in silence." Nathaniel's eyes darkened. "Destroy that ledger, and you destroy evidence. Or you unlock the secrets," she said, voice low and commanding. "The secrets that can bring down empires." Outside, thunder rumbled, a distant reminder that storms come for all, no matter how deeply they hide. The girl fixed Nathaniel with a steady gaze. "This isn't just history. It's a warning. The puppeteers may have built their stage, but every stage has cracks. The most brutal battles are not fought with swords or guns, but within the mind, where identity is attacked and self-worth is shattered." The girl's voice softened but carried a weight that crushed the air. "To control a people, you must first control how they see themselves. You strip away history, heritage, and hope. You replace it with shame and doubt." Nathaniel swallowed hard, feeling a cold weight settle in his chest. Decades of systematic erasure, tearing families apart, rewriting stories, defining worth by skin color and lineage. She stepped closer, eyes fierce yet sad. They made the enslaved believe they were less human, less capable, less deserving. This psychological cage was tighter than any iron shackle. Mara's gaze dropped, haunted by the invisible wounds carried across generations. Even those born free carried scars, whispers of inferiority drilled into their souls. The girl's tone grew sharper, but some fought back, not with weapons but with memory. Songs, stories, secret languages, threads of defiance woven into the fabric of their existence. Nathaniel's fists clenched, and still, the system fought to erase those threads. "Yes," she replied. "Institutions enforced this war on identity through education, religion, and law, teaching submission, rewriting history to favor the oppressors." She looked directly at Nathaniel. "And this war hasn't ended. It continues in minds clouded by lies, in societies built on silence. A heavy pause filled the room, but awareness is the first weapon against it. Knowing that this battle is real and fought every day. The girl's voice dropped to a whisper, yet filled with power. Break the chains in your mind, and you break the chains outside. Nathaniel's eyes flickered with the first hint of understanding, a dangerous, awakening truth. Outside, the wind carried distant echoes, voices of those who refused to be silenced. Amidst the shadows of cruelty, a different story breathes. A story of defiance whispered behind closed doors and hidden in the night. The girl's voice softened, but it carried the steel of unwavering resolve. Not everyone bent to the system. Some refused to be silenced, who formed invisible bonds, a secret network of rebellion and protection. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed, skepticism battling curiosity. This network operated in silence, passing messages through songs, coded words, even gestures unnoticed by their oppressors. She continued, they shared knowledge about escape routes, hidden caches of food, safe havens beyond the plantation's reach. They taught their children history that the textbooks erased. Mara leaned in, captivated. These rebels were more than fighters. They were guardians of memory, keepers of truth. The girl's gaze darkened, but the price was high. Betrayal lurked in every corner. Informants and enforcers hunted them relentlessly. Nathaniel's voice dropped, a whisper now. How did they survive? Through cunning, courage, and sacrifice. They disguised their resistance as compliance, their gatherings as prayer. Every small victory was a beacon of hope. She pulled a folded cloth from her pocket, embroidered with symbols passed down through generations. This is their legacy, a mark of those who carried the flame, risking everything to keep the truth alive. Nathaniel's hand trembled slightly. Why reveal this now? Because the network never died. It lives in the blood of those who remember, in the hearts of those ready to reclaim what was stolen. The room seemed to pulse with a renewed energy, as if the ghosts of the past stirred awake. Understanding this resistance is not just history. It's a call to awaken, to recognize the power that lies hidden beneath silence. Nathaniel looked away, the weight of generations pressing on his shoulders. The girl's voice was steady, commanding. The forbidden secret is not just in what was lost, but in what survived. And that survival holds the key to true freedom. In the darkest corners of oppression, knowledge becomes rebellion, a secret weapon kept alive through whispered teachings and hidden rituals. The girl's voice softened, reverent yet fierce. The enslaved carried more than pain. They carried wisdom, ancient knowledge forbidden by those in power, because it threatened to undo the very foundations of control. Nathaniel's brow furrowed, intrigued despite himself. This knowledge wasn't in books or laws. It lived in stories, in the rhythms of drums, in the secrets of herbs and healing. A connection to something deeper. She stepped closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. They called it the old ways, knowledge of the earth, the spirit, and the self. Passed from mother to daughter, father to son, hidden in plain sight. Mara's eyes widened. So, this was a kind of magic? More than magic, the girl said. It was power. Power to heal wounds, to protect minds, to resist the invisible chains. Nathaniel's skepticism faltered. But if it was so powerful, why was it nearly lost? because the oppressors feared it. They burned books, outlawed languages, hunted the keepers of this knowledge. But it survived, encoded songs in secret gatherings beneath moonlight. She held up a small bundle wrapped in cloth, herbs, bones, and symbols entwined. This bundle is a fragment of that forbidden wisdom, a reminder that power exists beyond what can be controlled or measured. Nathaniel's gaze lingered on the bundle, a flicker of respect and fear. They suppressed it to maintain control. But the truth is resilient. The girl's eyes burned with conviction. To reclaim freedom, one must first reclaim knowledge, the truth hidden beneath layers of lies and fear. A silence settled over the room, thick with the weight of revelation. She spoke again, voice steady and commanding. The forbidden knowledge is not just history. It is a living force, waiting for those brave enough to wield it. Nathaniel's face tightened, the first cracks appearing in his armor of denial. Power rarely thrives in isolation. Behind every empire of cruelty, there's a hidden council, a silent coven that seals dark pacts to preserve privilege and control. The girl's voice sharpened, cutting through the stillness like a blade. The Devo family was not unique. They were part of an unbroken chain of elite families who forged alliances in shadow, their secrets buried beneath grand estates and whispered in secret chambers. Nathaniel's eyes darkened, the weight of his lineage suddenly palpable. These families didn't just own land, they owned laws, churches, and even minds. Their power was a pact, sealed not in ink, but in blood and silence. She leaned forward, voice low and urgent. These pacts promised wealth beyond measure, protection from justice, and dominion over others. But they demanded a price, the sacrifice of humanity, the erasure of conscience. Mara swallowed hard, feeling the oppressive presence of unseen forces. They traded souls for status, weaving corruption into the very fabric of society. The girl's gaze never wavered. These pacts reached beyond borders, entwining politics, religion, and commerce into a web that trapped generations. Nathaniel's voice trembled, barely audible. And the girl? The slave? She was a symbol, a living secret, used to hide inconvenient truths, to mask the fractures within the coven. The girl's eyes flashed with warning. To protect their legacy, they silenced voices, destroyed records, and manipulated narratives. Nathaniel clenched his fists. "How deep does this go?" "Deeper than you dare imagine," she said. "This isn't just history. It's an ongoing conspiracy designed to keep power concentrated and truth buried." The room seemed to pulse with unspoken threats. But every covenant has its breaking point. The girl's voice hardened. And the impossible secret you seek is the fracture in their foundation. Outside, a storm gathered, a tempest that mirrored the brewing reckoning. Understanding the silent coven is the first step toward dismantling it. Even the most unbreakable empires carry cracks, hidden fractures threatening to shatter the illusion of invincibility. The girl's voice dropped to a near whisper, heavy with gravity. The Devo family's carefully constructed world hid a secret so explosive. It was sealed away with threats, bribes, and blood. Nathaniel leaned in, heart pounding. "What kind of secret?" She paused, letting the silence stretch like a blade. "A secret born from forbidden love, racial defiance, and a child whose very existence threatened the foundations of power." Mara's breath caught. "A child?" "Yes. Not just any child. but one who challenged the rigid laws of bloodlines and inheritance. The girl, the slave with an impossible past. The girl's eyes locked with Nathaniel's. Jean-Baptiste was a threat not because of his blood, but because of what he represented. A bridge between worlds, a symbol of what the elite feared most, change. Nathaniel swallowed hard, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down. How did they try to erase him? They forged documents, manipulated laws, and used fear to silence anyone who dared acknowledge him. His existence was a crack in their perfect facade, a reminder that control is never absolute. The girl's voice grew fierce, but the secret survived in whispered stories, hidden papers, and the memories of those who refused to forget. Mara's eyes shone with newfound understanding. This secret could topple centuries of lies. Exactly, the girl said, because once that fracture is exposed, the whole structure trembles. Outside, thunder rumbled, a warning echoing through the halls of power. The girl's tone was commanding, awakening something deep within. To know this secret is to hold a weapon the elite fear more than any army. Nathaniel's gaze hardened. And that weapon is truth. She nodded slowly. Truth, once unleashed, can't be caged. Truth is a double-edged sword, powerful yet perilous. To wield it is to invite both liberation and destruction. The girl's voice hardened, filled with warning. Those who dared to expose the fracture faced ruin, social exile, violence, even death. But silence meant complicity, and the chains would only tighten. Nathaniel's eyes flickered with conflict. Why risk everything for a secret? Because some secrets are not meant to stay buried, she said. They're the key to dismantling lies, reclaiming identity, and breaking cycles of oppression. Mara's voice was barely audible. But the cost is always high, the girl acknowledged. Families torn apart, reputations destroyed, lives lost. But the alternative is a lifetime of deception and control. She leaned forward, her gaze intense. Jean-Baptiste's story was nearly erased, but fragments survived, letters, testimonies, hidden ledgers. These fragments are weapons in the fight for truth. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. And those who control the narrative? They wield immense power over law, media, education. They rewrite history to protect themselves, to keep others in their place. The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. But every time they bury a secret, they create a spark that can ignite rebellion. A silence hung heavy in the air, thick with the weight of unspoken truths. Exposing the fracture is dangerous, she said, but it is also necessary, because knowledge is power and power is freedom. Nathaniel's face tightened, the gravity of the choice before him settling deep. The girl's voice was resolute, commanding. To walk this path is to embrace risk, but also to awaken strength you never knew you had. Outside, the first light of dawn pierced the darkness, a fragile promise of change. The past is never truly gone. It lingers in bloodlines, in whispered stories, in the very soil beneath our feet. The girl's voice softened, yet carried undeniable strength. The rebels, the keepers of forbidden knowledge, left behind more than scars. They left a legacy. Nathaniel's eyes searched hers, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. A legacy of courage. Exactly, she said. Courage to question, to resist, to speak when silence was demanded. They handed down truths disguised as myths, lessons wrapped in parables. Mara nodded slowly. So the story continues. It must, the girl insisted, because the legacy is a call to awaken, to reclaim identity, to challenge the systems that seek to erase us. Nathaniel's voice was low, reverent. And we're the inheritors? Yes, she replied. Not just of pain, but of power. Power to rewrite the narrative, to dismantle the structures of control. The girl's gaze intensified. But inheritance comes with responsibility. To protect the truth, to teach it, to live it. Mara's eyes shone with determination. It's a burden and a gift. The girl smiled faintly. A burden because it demands sacrifice. A gift because it holds the seeds of transformation. Nathaniel looked out the window, the weight of generations settling on him. To carry this legacy is to walk a dangerous path, but a necessary one, the girl affirmed. Because true freedom is born from truth, and truth is never safe. She paused, letting the words hang heavy in the air. Remember this, the most beautiful slave was never just a victim. She was a beacon, an impossible secret meant to awaken the world. Nathaniel's jaw clenched, resolve hardening. Then we carry the flame. The girl nodded. And we ignite the revolution. Control is never just physical. The most insidious chains are forged in the mind. Silent, unseen, but unbreakable unless exposed. The girl's voice grew cold, clinical. The plantation, the auction block, the laws, they were only part of the system. The real power lay in psychological control. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. Mind control? Exactly. From birth, the oppressed were conditioned to accept their place, to doubt their worth, to fear rebellion, to internalize inferiority. She leaned in, voice low and urgent. Language was weaponized. Terms like property, inferior, and obedient were drilled into minds until resistance became unthinkable. Mara swallowed hard. They stole identity. Yes, the girl agreed. Erasing names, rewriting histories, suppressing languages and beliefs. This created a psychological cage more confining than any physical barrier. Nathaniel's fists clenched. But how did anyone survive such control? Through resilience and covert resistance, she said. Songs, stories, secret gatherings. These were acts of defiance, ways to preserve selfhood and spark hope. She paused, eyes blazing. But the oppressors fought back with fear and violence, ensuring compliance through terror. Mara's voice was a whisper. So silence was survival and also control. The girl's expression hardened. Exactly. Fear fractured communities, turning victims against each other, breaking bonds that might fuel revolt. Nathaniel's gaze sharpened. Breaking the psychological chains is harder than breaking the physical ones, because it requires unlearning decades of programming, she said. Recognizing the lies told to you and reclaiming your mind. She stared directly at Nathaniel, voice commanding. To awaken is to confront the deepest fears imposed by those who seek to keep you silent. A shadow passed across Nathaniel's face, the weight of realization heavy. Comment below twice. I break the chains of silence. I reclaim my mind and my power. Power sustains itself not just through force, but through the illusion of legitimacy, a carefully constructed theater where truth is shaped and dissent is crushed. The girl's voice was steady, cold like steel. Institutional manipulation is the engine behind control. It's how the powerful manufacture consent and maintain dominance without overt violence. Nathaniel's eyes darkened with understanding. Governments, courts, churches, all complicit? All complicit, she confirmed. They design narratives, control education, and manipulate laws to protect the elite's interests and erase inconvenient truths. She leaned forward, voice sharp. The girl's story was buried in legal loopholes, disguised by false documents, and erased by institutions meant to serve justice. Mara's voice trembled. So the system is built to protect itself. Exactly, the girl said. It's self-perpetuating, every part reinforcing the other in a vast web of deception. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. And the public? The public is fed curated truths. History rewritten, heroes glorified, villains demonized. This creates obedience masked as consent. She paused, eyes piercing. But beneath this facade, resistance simmers. Truths whispered in shadows, questions asked in secret. Mara's eyes flickered with hope. So change is possible. It is not only possible, it's inevitable, the girl said with conviction. Institutions can't hold on to lies forever. The cracks will widen. Nathaniel's voice was firm. But to expose them, we must understand their mechanisms. The girl nodded. Knowledge of manipulation is the first step toward dismantling it. Outside, the wind howled, a relentless force breaking through barriers. To understand today's empire of control, you must trace its roots back, far beyond what history textbooks admit. The girl's voice was low, heavy with the weight of ages. Corruption didn't start in the plantations or the courts. It began in ancient halls where power was first hoarded, hidden behind divine right and secret rites. Nathaniel listened, captivated. What kind of corruption? Corruption of truth, of justice, of human dignity. When rulers claimed God's favor to justify cruelty and inequality, they birthed a system that sacrifices the many for the few. She continued, voice grave. From Babylon to Rome, from pharaohs to emperors, corruption took root, embedding itself into religion, law, and culture. Mara's eyes widened. So this is the real origin of our chains. Yes, these ancient systems evolved, but never died. They transformed into new forms. Colonialism, slavery, institutional racism, all built on that foundation of inherited corruption. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. And the secrets? Sacred texts rewritten, histories erased, forbidden knowledge hidden to keep the masses compliant and the elite untouchable. The girl's tone sharpened. But every era birthed rebels, those who dared to question gods and kings, who risked everything to expose the rot. She locked eyes with Nathaniel. The most beautiful slave, the girl, was a product of this legacy, a living symbol of what ancient corruption tried to bury. Nathaniel's voice was fierce. Then to break free, we must confront this history head-on. The girl nodded. Only by understanding the origins can we dismantle the chains that bind us today. Outside, the ancient wind whispered through the trees, carrying echoes of forgotten rebellions. History is written by the victors, but it is also censored by them. What you think you know is only a fraction, carefully curated, sanitized, and often outright fabricated. The girl's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Suppressed truths are the foundation of the system's power. They hide the real stories, stories that would shatter illusions if ever told. Nathaniel leaned in, eyes hungry for revelation. Like what? like the girl's true identity. Her lineage, her heritage, deliberately obscured to keep her silent and powerless. She continued, voice bitter, like countless others whose lives were erased from official records. Names crossed out, births and deaths hidden, voices silenced. Mara's voice trembled. Why erase them? Because acknowledging these truths threatens the very fabric of the institutions built on lies. It forces a reckoning too dangerous for the powerful to risk. The girl's gaze was piercing. Suppressed truths reveal the cruelty hidden beneath the veneer of civilization. Brutality disguised as law, dehumanization masked as order. Nathaniel's face darkened, and the people, the descendants, they inherit these silences, these gaps in history, carrying scars they don't understand, identities fragmented by omission. She paused, voice heavy with sorrow. But buried truths also carry power. Power to heal, to reclaim, to resist. Mara's eyes filled with determination. So uncovering them is an act of rebellion. Exactly, the girl said. Each truth unearthed chips away at the system's control, lighting the way toward liberation. Nathaniel's voice was steady, resolute. Then our mission is clear. The girl nodded, her expression fierce. To bring buried truths to light, no matter the cost. Outside, the wind whispered through cracked walls, carrying the weight of forgotten stories ready to be heard. Power, when cloaked in secrecy, feeds on rituals, ceremonies that bind followers, silence dissent, and enforce loyalty through fear and mystery. The girl's voice lowered, heavy with ancient dread. These rituals are not mere superstition. They are the tools of control, carefully designed to keep the masses in line and the elite untouchable. Nathaniel's brow furrowed. What kind of rituals? Blood rites, oaths sworn in shadow, sacrifices offered to unseen forces. They create invisible bonds stronger than chains. She continued, voice grim. The girl's ancestors were bound by such rites. Promises made under threat, loyalty enforced by terror, power maintained through manipulation of belief. Mara shivered. Are these practices still alive? More than you realize, the girl said, eyes flickering with fire. They evolved, secret societies, hidden orders, influential circles where deals are struck away from public view. Nathaniel's voice was harsh. So the corruption isn't just political, it's spiritual, psychological. Yes, she confirmed. These rituals harness fear, faith, and obligation to perpetuate control across generations. She leaned in, voice sharp as a blade. The auction block, the plantation, the laws, all shadows cast by these deeper forces. Mara whispered, and the girl? She was caught between worlds, blood-bound to ancient power, yet marked for silence by the very system that feared her. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. To break the cycle, we must expose these secrets. The girl nodded solemnly. Because in the darkness of ritual, truth becomes rebellion, and rebellion becomes revolution. Outside, the night thickened, silent witnesses to secrets older than memory. Rebellion is never without cost. Those who dare to speak, to resist, to shatter the silence paid with more than freedom. They paid with their very lives. The girl's voice was somber, heavy with unspoken grief. Every act of defiance against the system was met with brutal retribution. Public executions, disappearances, and whispered threats ensured fear spread faster than hope. Nathaniel's face hardened. So the girl's silence was forced, more than forced. It was carved into her very being by the consequences others suffered before her. She leaned closer, voice urgent. Her family, those who resisted the old orders, were broken. Some vanished without a trace. Others crushed beneath the weight of orchestrated ruin. Mara's eyes glistened with tears. And still, the system endures. Yes, the girl said, because fear is its weapon and silence its shield. Nathaniel's voice dropped to a growl. But fear can be broken. True, she said, but only when the cost of silence becomes higher than the cost of speaking. She fixed her gaze on Nathaniel. The girl's story is not just about survival. It is a warning and a call. A call to break the cycle, to shatter the chains not just on her, but on all who suffer in silence. Mara's voice was fierce. Then the fight isn't over. No, the girl confirmed. It's just beginning. Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, promising a day where shadows might finally be pierced by truth. The deepest chains are forged not of metal, but of lies, silence, and submission. To break them requires more than courage. It demands awakening. The girl's voice was steady, commanding. The impossible secret isn't just a story buried in history. It's a lesson, a key. The key to reclaiming your power lies in seeing through the illusions, naming the lies, and rejecting the fear they impose. Nathaniel's eyes burned with newfound clarity. So how do we break free? First, she said, you must own your history. She paused. Every hidden truth, every suppressed story. Build your own Understand narrative. Where you come from. Don't let others define the systems that shaped you or your worth, and the ways they seek on your terms, to control you. Grounded in truth and resilience. Mara's voice was firm, and the system's power crumbles when enough refuse to consent. When silence turns into voices, fear into action, ignorance into knowledge. The girl's gaze locked with theirs. Your mind is your battleground. Cultivate awareness. Question everything. Seek forbidden knowledge. Resist easy answers. Nathaniel nodded slowly. And the secret, she whispered, is that freedom is not given, is taken by those willing to confront darkness. Not just outside, but within themselves. She stepped back, voice resolute. The girl's legacy is your warning and your beacon. Her story was almost lost, but now it's your weapon. Outside, the morning sun rose, cutting through shadows and illuminating a new dawn. One where the impossible secret becomes the catalyst for real power.